Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Between Two Coaches. Welcome back because we officially have our second episode of season 3. Nick will argue it's season 2.5, but we already know how we feel about Nick's opinions, right? We're on a mission to make fitness more human. Snark sold separately. I'm Coach Amanda, and I'm joined as always by my co-host.
It's me, Coach Nick. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We have a great episode today. It's 4 of us, and we're going to talk about a fun topic of the team behind the runner, or as I deemed it, because I love superhero movies, the Fantastic Four. And we're going to be diving into the power of a multidisciplinary team. In particular, this episode, a running coach, a sports dietitian, a strength coach, a physical therapist, in an athlete's journey and answering the question, how can athletes benefit when experts collaborate instead of working in silos? And today we're joined for a second time by sports dietitian Holley and physical therapist Dr. Vicky Sekely to chat about this topic. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for
Yay.
having us. I feel like we should have picked superhero names as our arc titles. That would have been
Good
better.
call. That
Since
should
you
have
were
been it.
talking about the Fantastic Four. I want to be Wonder Woman.
I'll be Reed Richards.
Or Batman. Batman would be cool too.
I don't know who else there is.
I
so
don't- neither
Just
do I.
give me something.
Vicky and I are Spider-Man. Who are we?
Can I be, instead of like Catwoman, can I be Dog Woman? Just make up my own.
Yeah, sure.
That feels
There's a Dog Man
more like
movie
me.
that my kid wanted to see.
Sorry, I took us off the rails already.
No, you were on theme. We were just unaware. We're just blissfully unaware, Vicky and I.
I like it that way.
But yeah,
So
thanks for having us.
we love having you guys back. So we can, although it says Holley, Vicky, and Amanda tell us about ourselves. Let's start with the guests of honor. Let's start with, oh my gosh, 2 S's. I was going to say, let's go in alphabetical order. You're making me use my brain. Let's go with Holley. First, Holley, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your specialties as a sports dietitian and what else I know for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about a team around a runner, a team, even, confidentiality is important, but the 3 of us actually share a client who is not a runner on my roster, but just the team behind an active individual, someone who cares about their health and wellness. Tell us about who you are, Holley.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Holley. I'm a sports dietitian. I also am a personal trainer and run coach. So kind of like Amanda was saying, I wear a lot of hats, but all of my clients, like not all of them are trained by me. Some just use me as their sports RD and are trained by others, such as Amanda, Nick, and Vicky as maybe their coaches and many other coaches as well. I definitely have like strength programs and stuff too, but I focus mostly on sports nutrition over at my practice, Holley Field Nutrition. We also dive a lot into like functional testing and functional nutrition to help manage GI and hormone related issues as well, which I know a couple of your clients have benefited from. So I take that angle and also have my master's in eating disorders. So I definitely take an angle of being eating disorder informed and wanting to approach nutrition in a way that makes our relationship with food better and not worse, which is definitely something that I've run into a lot in like the endurance community, is that there's a lot of overlap between eating disorders and endurance athletes. So that's kind of what I do over in my neck of the woods.
Doctor?
Is it my turn?
Yes.
So yeah, I am a physical therapist and a strength coach, and I have a virtual run coaching and strength coaching business, Train Smart, Run Strong. And yeah, very similarly to Holley, like I focus mainly on the strength and the run coaching, and I love collaborating with sports nutritionists very specifically. Started this business mainly because I felt like there was such a void between physical therapy and getting back to running. To be completely honest, I think there still is, even though it's been like, over 5 years now. I just feel like the rehab process, especially when it's dictated by insurance, really fails people, but runners in particular, simply because, it's very simple. Rehab can be very simple. And because insurance dictates it, I'm sure a lot of people have felt this way. You kind of reach a certain point and you're either cut off by insurance, or your physical therapist is like, okay, you've graduated now, go into the world, and you can maybe do like a body weight squat and a clamshell. And like you're supposed to be running, full mileage at that point. And I just felt like that was insufficient. And unfortunately, I didn't see a way to quick enough change the whole system as much as I'd like to. So for the time being, I'm virtual, not in person, but also don't take insurance because it's just, you can't do much. You're kind of put into a box. And I find that very frustrating. So a lot of the clients that I see are people who have been to physical therapy many times and still can't get to a certain mileage, can't train for a race, can't run pain-free, because it's just not enough. And I wish that there was a better and bigger way to change that, throughout the entire healthcare system. But for the time being, that's what you got me for. So, trying to post as much free content online, because obviously I don't want my services to only be like, for people who have a ton of money to pay for them. That's what I feel like Instagram, TikTok, podcasts are really for. And then if you want something more personalized, more specific, that's what you can come to me. So, yeah.
Relate. My
Yeah.
practice is similar and for similar reasons in the dietetics world, so I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Dr. Vicky. But no, I agree. I agree with all that. I think, as for today's episode, I'm acting in the role of run coach because it's the only thing I do. I don't have all these other fancy titles. And, I've seen that through my years. I've seen that with athletes. I've seen how a, team, you can't do it alone. I don't operate outside of my realm of knowledge. I've been to a physical therapist. I don't pretend like I can be one. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express, so I don't have the expertise. I eat food, and I know how to fuel my long runs, but I'm not act like I know all that stuff, even though I've worked with a dietitian before. So all those things are why, the team around the runner, I think, is such an important thing to acknowledge. And when coaches who usually have the most access to a runner or athlete, and when they overstep their boundaries, acting as they can do everything without the knowledge needed, it can cause a lot of problems.
Hard yes. Should I? I'll go next.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not? Everyone here, I think that I'm a full-time fitness professional. So for the better part of the last 10 years, I'm a certified personal trainer, group fitness instructor for a brand called Equinox. And I do a lot of their um, con- program curation when it comes to cycling and also strength training. And of course, I'm a run coach and I work very closely. My philosophy is rooted in this notion that all bodies deserve an experience that incorporates movement into their lives, which means what's really important for me, and you'll hear this same message from Vicky and Holley, which just makes my heart sing, is that like there are so many conditions that impact an individual's health that are out of the individual's control, including their environment, their socioeconomic conditions. So I really lean into how these factors, economic stability, these social determinants of health, as we call them, how we can make people's lives better and by making fitness more accessible. Whether that is through providing resources in the way that Vicky and Holley do through our different platforms, providing different price points for our services is huge as well. I don't only train folks one-on-one. I have one-off consults, I'll have monthly consults. I want people to feel like they can access fitness at different point at whatever capacity they can. And bigger than that, I will often say that I am only as good as I call them my support squad. And the support squad for me is when I know somebody is willing to see a physical therapist for their needs, I'm referring them to Vicky. When I know somebody could really benefit from seeing a sports dietitian, they're a runner, they have low ferritin, I'm going to Holley. Hey, are you taking clients right now? And I'm same with our girl Stevie, right? I'm thinking of all the people who I support. The majority of them have at least one other professional who they are going to for their health needs. In addition, although we don't have somebody on here that's related to mental health, I have referred people to Stephanie Roth Goldberg, who specifically works with, fun fact, in case you don't, she was one of my spin students, and that's how we
Oh,
connected.
I knew that.
And she's like, you talk my talk. And I'm like, what do you talk? And then I learned that she also supports folks she's eating disorder informed, and she supports folks through their journeys, either through disordered eating, eating disorders, or just having a better relationship with food, weight in their bodies. And I think that all of these professionals just play such a critical role in an individual's life. It can't just be me. And like Coach Nick was saying, I should not be providing meal plans. I should not be providing, here are the 3 exercises to fix your shin split. But Vicky would argue that physical therapists shouldn't be either, and she's right. So that is the long and short of me.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that, Amanda. Great intros, everyone. I think it really gives everyone an idea of where we're all, coming from for this episode. And so I think the first best way to jump into this is kind of like talk about the collaboration between it all matters, and where we all see ourselves overlapping. Also realizing that all of you are coaches too. For purposes of this episode, like how, and maybe we'll start with Dr. Vicky this time. Maybe you can talk a little bit as a physical therapist, like how you feel when you do physical therapy, how it sort of overlaps with nutrition, with sports dietitians and strength coach and running coaches, etc.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think something I really want to talk about and bring up is just how Nick, you and I have collaborated a lot with certain athletes, and I think that that's really one of the kind of coolest aspects of my job right now. I feel like working with you, who obviously you're my coach too, so obviously you're someone that I greatly trust with coaching specifically, but I think what is kind of the bridge between what I do and then like sending an athlete back to you would be just kind of looking for any red flags, and then anything that I find I just relay to you, like, hey, let's keep mileage a little bit low, let's take out speed workouts. And then that's a really really good way to for us to just collaborate on someone's calendar without it being like this. All the really the biggest difference, I guess what I'm trying to say, between coaching and that physical therapy is just the red flag aspect, right? And that's what I went to school for, is to know, like, is that bad? Okay, do we need to go see a doctor? Do we need to get an MRI? Do we need to get imaging? Or do we need to modify in these specific ways because this area is being loaded differently? I know that I'm kind of like speaking gibberish here, but I think that that's the main difference between the rehab portion and the coaching portion. And what I take very seriously, and Holley, you know this because I've sent clients to you and also we've spoken, is again that collaboration between rehabbing an area and nutrition. And I say this to my athletes all the time: I'm going to make sure that you're hitting the bare minimum. Past that, I am not the expert. I will remind you that you have to be fueling your runs. You have to increase your carb intake as your mileage increases, your protein intake, everything. But when we're talking specifics, like, that's not my expertise. So going to someone when you actually, like, if an athlete will say to me, I'm tired all of the time. I've increased my food intake, but I'm still tired. I'm not sleeping. That in my brain is like, okay, that's past an issue that I know how to resolve. I need to make sure that I am getting you the right resources to get through that, because that's a red flag in my eyes. So again, like, it's the idea of just noticing those red flags and then realizing if it's within my scope of practice to help, and then, referring out. And I think that's the coolest part about collaborating, but that also takes a level of like understanding what you don't know. And I think certain people who think they know everything, and like you'll see this in the social media world, and I can see all of you kind of like nodding your heads. You'll see people post certain things where it's like when they act already like they know everything, that's a red flag. You got to question that, because first of all, how can you know everything? That's kind of sad. First of all, we're always learning. And secondly, like it should be something where you recognize that you're really good at this thing, which means you might not be so good as someone else at something else. Right.
Yeah.
So having that recognition actually makes you a better coach, and then utilizing the people within your system, within your connections, is really like, I think that's what makes a coach extremely valuable and knowledgeable. And then also, like, not for nothing, but I actually really like all of you outside of sessions too, which I think is something
Matters.
that is important to, yeah, it matters. Like it's something important, because people who are going to sign up to work with me are probably signing up to work with me because they like what I'm posting on Instagram. They like my, personality, at least what they can see, because obviously, social media, a little bit of a mask.
You should see
But
her outside.
I'm extremely different. No, like, and that's the thing about you guys too, is you're all real when you show up on social media, as real as you can be, even by recognizing that, like, hey, I'm not posting everything all the time on here. And that takes a level of humility and a level of like humbleness, and also a level of being able to communicate with people that I think like even though Holley, you and I have never met in person, at least I don't think, like I feel like when I see you, I'm gonna be like, I know you. Like
Yeah.
we're friends. Like we are friends, which is cool to say, because that kind of connection sometimes is hard to develop on social media. And when you have those people in your corner, like I trust anyone that I'm gonna send to you is going to be in good hands. And you can't say that about every sports dietitian on social media. So I think that's another level of these connections that we have. It like goes beyond the professional. Like I know you know your stuff, but I also know that you can communicate well to my athletes. And that's like tenfold more important than the initial knowledge. I feel like I just rambled, so I'm going to back away from the mic.
No, you're fine. That's good. All
Oh,
great
good.
stuff.
It's just smoking.
Yeah.
It's been dropped on the floor.
Also, by the way, Vicky would be either She-Hulk or the Hulk with all her green tint going on, right?
I know.
So
I
that's
showed Nick before you guys came on, but they're renovating a house next door, and it's like got that green siding on it. So I'm tinted green.
yep.
Amazing.
Or it's the
Yeah.
gamma radiation. We don't know.
Yeah, it could be that.
Holley, why don't you chat a little bit about, the overlapping from the sports dietitian world to these other areas?
Yeah, this is such a good topic, and I'm glad I'm selfishly glad you asked me to come on this episode with my other wonderful colleagues, but also just that you're like covering this topic in general, even if it wasn't me, because I think this is really important. And I think a lot of professionals, I don't know if it's like you're new at this, or maybe you're just new at having a private practice, or you feel very isolated and almost like you have to know everything. You have to always have the answers. You have to be the go-to person for everything. And I think it's like a confidence issue, and not feeling confident enough to like
Yeah.
refer people out when you know that you actually don't know how to help this person, or what you're doing isn't working. I think that's such a strength to be able to do as a professional. And that's something I've definitely gotten better at doing as I've just gotten more experience. I feel like the more experience you get in a topic, the more you understand that you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Just kidding. You know stuff, but like, you know that there's a lot of stuff that we just don't have concrete answers for, that you don't totally understand. And as someone too, like I do wear a lot of hats. I am some people's sports dietitian. I am some people's functional dietitian. I am some people's nutrition, therapist to help them recover from eating disorder alongside their mental health therapist. I am some people's personal trainers, their strength coach, their run coach. Like the clients that I cover everything is very few, because that takes so much time and effort. So I also feel like a lot of the times too, it can be so helpful when I'm like, we're going to get more out of this if you defer mental health out, or if you defer to actually maybe a different provider to provide this type of test or resource or this type of coaching support if it's what you need. Because then you can just focus on like doing the stuff you're really good at and doing the stuff that is going to take plenty of time within its own. And then they can spend an hour with me, every other week. And then also an hour with Vicky every week. And then also 2 hours a week being trained by Coach Amanda. And then also Nick is their running coach, virtually on the side, talking to them every single day about their runs. And like, that's just such a good ecosystem and community to build around yourself if you really are finding that, yeah, you need like some support in a lot of different facets of being not just an athlete, but also like a person. So I think one that's really important for those listening who are, maybe more of like just the runner, the client kind of avatar, and then maybe folks who are listening who are like one of the other professionals or our colleagues, just having the courage and confidence to ask for help and refer out is going to help not just you, but also your clients a lot more. And then you get to support, of course, other professionals too, which is very helpful. And building that network takes time. Like we've all talked, like on the side, offline, all the time, sent voice memos, sent funny memes, sent grievances. Like building those connections is so helpful. And that's why, when I do refer people to specific professionals, both within this podcast episode and other, colleagues outside of the podcast episode, I'm not doing that lightly. Like I really trust these people that I'm referring out to. And I'm trying to kind of help do some of that heavy lift of finding a professional for my client, because I know that can take a long time sometimes if you're just like going in it blind. I've also had clients where I had a client recently, her therapist wanted to basically have her like sign a release to have permission to be able to talk to me, like the therapist to communicate with me. And the client was like, I think that'd be a good idea, but like, I'm really nervous. Like, I don't want to bother Holley. She's already so busy. And she was kind of approaching the conversation, like that to me. And I was like, this literally, that's my job. Like, please, please don't feel like this happens all the time. This is not weird. This is not abnormal. This is not atypical. This should be happening. So I'm glad that your therapist brought it up, because we just haven't talked in a while. So we haven't brought it up yet. So having, other, medical and healthcare and fitness professionals communicating with each other is very much a thing that can and should be happening if you feel that it would be beneficial to you. So in case you just didn't know that too, it's another reason why I'm glad we're doing this episode.
Because in an ideal world, like when I close my eyes, I see the four of us and like a couple others that we like. So if everyone just close your eyes, we're in a beautiful facility. Ideally, it's the Upper West Side. I'm sorry, it has to be the Upper West Side. So we're all on the Upper West Side, in a facility. We all have our own little offices, and her name is, our client's name is Crystal. For that I don't know where it's coming to me. Crystal, it's coming to me. And Crystal comes and she sees me. I'm training her. I asked her how her week is. She tells me that she's noticed in the last couple of weeks she's been low energy, or she's sharing that there's this niggle that won't go away in her foot. And I'm like, that's so, have you seen Dr. Vicky yet this week? And then she's like, no. I was, go to the front desk. You're going to book your appointment with Kofi. Okay. And Kofi is going to make sure that you get on Dr. Vicky's schedule. Oh, you're feeling low energy. Have you been eating? When was the last time you got some blood work done? Maybe you need a blood work consult with Holley. Why don't you go and have Owen schedule you with I'm naming everyone's son on the podcast. So but that's the ideal world for me, because I find that, and I'm sure that Holley, Vicky, and all four of us, since we both wear the hat of working one-on-one with clients in a either personal training or in a run coaching capacity, oftentimes our clients come to us first with the things that are potentially not outside our scope of practice, even with all the hats that each of you individually wear. There's a difference between, as you guys are sharing, a personal trainer who says, well, I can fix you, and a personal trainer who's like, I got a guy. And I will joke with my clients. I will tell them often that I'm really good at like three things. But I pride myself on being really good at those three things. And I couldn't list them for you right now, but I'm sure they exist. And I want the people around me I rely on them as the experts in their quote unquote three things. So and to speak to Holly's point, I am on email threads, text chains with every one of my clients who has somebody else in their support squad to ensure that everyone is communicating. That way we can provide the best experience for our clients. So do not hesitate to connect the professionals in your support squad. And if there is a professional in your support squad that is taking on a few too many of those roles, I would get curious about that.
Especially if they're
I
not
also
credentialed in
I
that
think
Yes.
this
space.
is a timely episode too, because right now what we're seeing are like, and I'm not going to name names as much as join the Patreon for that. No, I'm kidding. There are a ton of influencers now who are selling coaching for like $600, $700 a month. And if you go to their website, it says like all in, like you get it all. You get, injury rehab, you get sports nutrition information. And they have their credential is like, I qualified for Boston. And it's like, what's happening right now? Like that is a red flag. That's a red flag. And yeah, it sounds nice and it sounds like the easy answer, but this person is likely going to tell you what worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
9.9 out of 10 times, that is not what's going to work for you. And they likely didn't have every single injury for every single reason that you're going to get. And guess what? What they're putting on their Instagram is what they're going to tell you. If they tell you that they had a knee injury and they did, 5 hours of foam rolling and it magically disappeared on their next 20-mile run, that's what they're going to tell you to do. Just remember, like, as these influencers get more popular, and I almost feel bad calling it out, but at the same time, I'm like, no, we need to start calling it out because it has become a huge problem that, like, you gain a following, you run a race fast, and you become a run coach, and you charge an exorbitant amount of money that is just
Mm-hmm.
insane because you promise all of these amazing things and you're not held to any standard because you have no credentials and you're not practicing under like a body that would keep you in line for that. You can just, scam people. Ultimately, that's a scam. I think this is a really important episode because you need to kind of keep an eye out for that too, because that is not okay. It's not okay.
I've also had hard conversations with other professionals. Like I can think of one instance. I referred a client to a endocrinologist who I have a relationship with, and thought would be just a good resource for her. She was talking about like maybe considering if she'd be a good candidate for hormone replacement therapy post menopause, and I was like, that's not my specialty. So, go see this person. Again, this is where, yeah, I try to kind of bridge the gap. Hey, this client of mine is going to come see you for this reason. This is what we've been working on. And, it's also up to the responsibility of the other practitioner to ask questions. It's up to the responsibility of the client to provide information so that they can get good care. Basically, something that happened was, provider was not aware that the client had a eating disorder history and made a couple of like body composition related comments that were 1% of the conversation, but of course really triggered
Mm.
that person as a
Yeah.
whole. And she told me about it because she had a really long relationship with me. And then I was like, oh, well, thank you for telling me. Like, I'm sorry that happened. That sucks because I, connected you with this person. Let me go talk to her, and have had a great conversation with the doctor. And she was like, oh, my, okay, good to know. Like, I got to ask some different questions because again, we're professionals in our own silos and we're not always going to be perfect at everything else in other people's lines of profession. So, I also like to be transparent about like, hey, if one of my colleagues does something that's just not good for my client, it's not necessarily, because they're a horrible person. It's just because they made a mistake or they didn't know. And I'm going to communicate that with them and try to maintain a good relationship if it's one that's worth maintaining. So I also want like my colleagues to hold me to that same standard. And, I've had run coaches also be like, hey, do you think I should do this with a training plan based off of this person's lab work or based off of where this person's at? And I'm like, no, I don't. Or like, yeah, that's totally fine. And I'll have them report back. And I've had other practitioners say, hey, Holley, you're doing a lot with like this gut health protocol right now, but we're trying to work through this. Can we take a pause? And I'm like, oops, I had no idea. So I think like that communication goes both ways too. And like you guys were saying about influencers online, they ain't gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've reached out to some people too who have had problematic, more toxic like relationships with like coaches and just gotten no response back. So it really kind of speaks for itself when that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. As a running coach, we'll talk about this a little more. Like I feel like I'm sort of the first line of defense in most cases. Like I'm working with the athlete closely all the time, and I'm the one who is acknowledging the things that are happening. I'm seeing the trends, and but the overlap is exactly what everyone's kind of said. Is I don't know. I can see things that are happening, but I don't know what's going on. Athletes are like, oh my God, out of nowhere, all of a sudden I feel completely fatigued and everything's wrong. And so we'll talk about the normal things like what's stress like, what's going on in your life, the things that could be happening. And then I'm like, oh, maybe when is the last time you've done blood work? Like labs come up and they're like, oh, 2 years ago. I'm like, hey, why don't we talk to someone? Why don't we get outside of, I'm not going to guess you have low iron. I'm not going to go tell you to supplement. I see too many people supplementing iron because they think they have low iron. And I'm like, don't poison yourself, please.
Just like a public service announcement too, they always pick Hemoplex because that one gets talked about a lot on various platforms. Please don't do that. Please. If you're doing that, stop doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
No, it's fine. And so it's like a lot of times it's like, no, we don't know. We don't know. We have to go get the information. Let's go talk to professionals. Let's not, there's sometimes people, like you said, Vicky, sometimes people have injuries that I've seen, that I've had. I'm not going to be like, here's what I did. I just pushed my foot in the ground and then it worked. Or, I got an extra hour of sleep. Or I'm like, so like as a coach, it's like we're noticing things, but this is our overlap. I don't know this stuff. And yes, we've talked about this a lot in this podcast, the trifecta of, social media where you kind of grow and you're like, got to keep monetizing your following. It's gotten more. Oh, I can't get that many athletes. So now I'm a strength coach. Oh, I can't get that many, strength people. Okay, now I'm also, a nutritionist. And now I got the trifecta. And now I can get a 3-pack. You can get all you need here, buffet of all my things, and it's $600 and you're good, right? So no, again, this is why this podcast matters. This is why the collaboration between experts. And like you said, having a team, right? I have lots of experts that I enjoy, that I have worked with, that I have personal relationships with, that I trust. Because as a coach, it is super important that I refer people out to people I trust. Again, like Holley said, can't always guarantee it'll work out. I feel responsible for making sure they get a quality person to help them, because I'm the person here. I'm the person responsible when they come back and they need running again, or they need their plan. I want to make sure they're set up. I want to make sure we've been communicated. I know what's going on, and I can help support going forward. Right? This is the collaboration, and this is why it matters. I think what could be helpful is maybe we kind of walk through, maybe a scenario of like an injured runner, right? So how does this comeback work? How does this work between your team? For me, it's always, okay, as the coach, I'm sort of working with an athlete, things are going well. All of a sudden, an injury springs up, right? For me in the beginning, it's okay, well, getting an analysis, getting some assessment of the situation. What happened? What did you do? What are the things you didn't tell me that I could maybe ascertain, right? Oh, I tripped down the stairs 2 days ago, but that doesn't have anything to do with this. Or little things like that. Like, what else is going on? Oh, I slept 1 hour for the last 3 days. Okay, whatever I can ascertain, right? And then sort of, okay, it's still hurting. Oh, okay, we rested for a day or two, maybe. That's like sort of my first. And then I'm like, okay, this isn't fixing it. I'm outside of the realm of what I know, right? So let's go get, in my case, usually in my first line of defense is, okay, let's go talk to, a PT. So I'll refer him out to a PT. In this case, like, let's kind of chat through the scenario. I'll refer him out to you, Vicky.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I would be searching for all of those questions too. And I think that's really important. I want to mention here too, just because you're my coach and I'm a PT, I think what good coaches do really well is, and this is what we can literally pull up this recent example in my training plan is like you suggested I take a reset week. And after you said that, I was like, oh, that's actually a really smart idea to do. And I'm a physical therapist. So like you can look at that and be like, yeah, but like that's what good coaches should do is you should be proactive about like, hey, we've been building, you've been doing all this good stuff. You have a marathon that's like not that close. Like it's not next month, it's not the month after. Like we have some time. And I was injured in March. So very smartly you were like, hey, this is a good time for that. And I think that's a very important distinction as well. I think a lot of probably I'm going to just pick on the influencer coaches because
No,
yeah.
they deserve it.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
okay.
Or actually I'll pick on AI training plans because I like to pick on a robot more than I would like an actual person, but like an
She's so
AI
sweet.
yeah, well, you know who I'm actually talking about. But in either case, they probably won't catch that because either you're working with someone who just is like very results hungry, which you see with a lot of the coaches who are just like very fast runners and influencers, or they are an AI training plan, so they just have no idea what's going on. But someone like Nick, who has taken my entire history into account, we've now been working together for what is it, like 3 years, knows that like I am someone who does well when I do rest. And oftentimes like I'll miss that on my own training plan. And even any physical therapist will attest to this too. Like I need my own team to help. That's why so many people ask me online, like, you're a PT or a run coach. Why don't you just make your own training plans? Because you will
No one
always
wants
have a
that.
blind spot on yourself. Like you will always, yeah, every profession says this because you don't put yourself into the same category as a patient. It's extremely hard to treat yourself like a client. That's why like a lot of doctors can't perform surgery on their own family members and on themselves. Like that would be crazy. It's a completely different situation. So having a coach who is proactive about injury prevention is so important. Now, that being said, injuries still happen, unfortunately. So I think what I take, in that next step, if we're talking about the client that Nick was bringing up, it's the same thing, taking a detailed history and really, especially for runners, it's honing in on the last like 3 to 6 weeks and what's been going on. I do try and get a detailed history on just like previous injuries in general, because that's one of the biggest factors is if you've been injured in that area before, it increases your risk of injuring that area again. So I just want to get the whole history on prior injuries. And specifically with runners, obviously we could talk about this at length in other podcasts. I'm sure you guys have already, but like specifically with a bone stress injury, that's when immediately my red flag goes up and I'm like, this is very little me right now and all sports dietitian. We got to get you referred out. If I hear, if I even hear like I have history of bone stress injury and it's starting to sound like one, the first thing I'm saying, have you worked with a dietitian before? Are you open to that? That's probably the next right step, and just a lot of education around that because I see so much pushback. And to be completely honest, I don't see a lot of primary care physicians making that connection just yet, which is really disappointing, but I digress. Again, I'm going to try and not make this a podcast about all of my woes with the healthcare system. But, that's really, flagging for any red flags, as I've mentioned previously, is one of the first things that I do. And thankfully, all of the times that like Nick, you have sent me a client, there hasn't, if I can remember, there hasn't been any like major red flags where I'm like, they need X, Y, and Z imaging, probably because you're a very good coach and you notice before that stuff happens. And it's usually just like, returning to you and just saying, hey, this is what I think it is. Drop mileage, drop speed workouts, monitor for this, you're good to go. And like I mentioned, typically if it's like a bone stress injury or an injury that is usually like overuse injuries, which is the majority of running stuff, requires a high level of nutrition because that's not really like, okay, is it an overuse injury because your training plan is too much or because you're not fueling enough? And with a coach like Nick, I know that I can trust him. I know because he's my coach too. He's probably not doing too much on your training plan. So like what's going on behind the scenes? And that's when that's when I'll go back to Nick and say, hey, maybe a referral to a sports. That's just though you already 9 times out of 10, Nick's like, I've already done that. Ha! Joke's on you,
Yeah.
I know.
I also have been told many times that, oh, why does this training feel so light? And I'm like, I always take that as a compliment. I'm like, don't, you'll get fit, don't worry. But like, I kind of
Literally.
appreciate you saying that because that's designed to be a long term type thing. But a lot of great points, Vicky. And I think what we can hit on here as we continue in this scenario, like, when you mentioned bone stress injuries, especially some of definitely more nutrition related ones that you can't ignore unless you lie on the internet and call it an overuse injury. But also like scenarios where, blood work, when I notice it's, hasn't been done or an injury actually happens. These are times where I definitely reach out to athletes, and I've had athletes stop with me, through an injury. And so they can go with nutritionists because, it's hard to pay for multiple things at once. And I'm like, this would help you a lot more right now. Sorry, nutrition, sports dietitian. Holley's grievance was that today. We didn't get to it, but she might grieve right now. But so as we come to the sports dietitian end of it, Holley, how do you feel you work in this scenario as a coach, sends someone injured or someone who hasn't done blood work or, has had a bone stress injury, et cetera?
So these guys on the podcast are using sports dietitian and sports nutritionist interchangeably. However, I know that they know what the difference is. I know that a lot of you listening may not, though, because I don't know, you don't know everything. You weren't taught this as soon as you were born. I mean, most people don't know what the difference is between a dietitian and a nutritionist, myself included, until I became a dietitian. Just to cover my grievance real quick with this, I think it's important while we're talking about this topic to identify the difference, because all the sports dietitians listening, every time we're called a nutritionist, like a small piece of us dies just a little bit inside, because you don't have to do a damn thing to call yourself a nutritionist. Anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. So, it's kind of like you could go to a nutritionist who's not a dietitian, who has their PhD in nutrition and is super smart and works with people and knows what they're doing. Or you can go to a nutritionist who's calling themselves that because they're skinny and they ate a salad once. Or anyone in between. When you go to a dietitian, you know that they have 4 years undergrad degree in dietetics that was not all bought out by big food or super corrupt. There are some things about my profession that I do not like, but it's basically a bunch of science classes. So that doesn't lie. And then they also have a postgraduate internship in clinical nutrition, food service, and community nutrition. That's typically a year or two long and is supervised and is basically just paying to work a bunch and get a lot of experience in different realms of nutrition. They then have to pass a boards exam, which has all kinds of fun questions on it. Everything ranging from what are the qualities of a good muffin? I'm actually serious. To do someone's intravenous feeding, solution math for someone who has a 30% surface area burn in the ICU. It's kind of a crazy test. And then you have to also get a master's degree, and you have to do continuing education, and you have a code of ethics and a board and all that good stuff. And then if you're like me, you also got an extra 2,000 hours in sports nutrition specifically, and you take an additional sports exam that is so hard. Every sports dietitian I've talked to before taking my first exam, they're all like, study a bunch. It's going to be super freaking hard. And they're right. Every 5 years, you have to pass it. So that is my grievance. That's the difference.
This is my fault.
No.
But it's a grievance that's worth grieving.
Yeah.
Just you're going to the right person for the right problem.
And you worked your ass off to be a professional in this space, and you deserve to be called the right thing and to not be looped in with,
some guy.
Lauren runs the world on Instagram.
That's literally probably somebody.
I know that probably.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Lauren.
She's gonna be all up in the reviews.
She's sliding into the DM right now.
But it's not even like I want to toot my own horn and I want to get the credit. Sure, of course there's part of that. But it's also like I want the person who's dealing with a bone stress injury because they have an underfueling issue and they have, some poor blood work and a bad relationship with it. I want them to go to the person that they're supposed to go to, the professional, and get the help that they're supposed to get. Because a lot of the times I'll hear people, oh, I went to a nutritionist before, and I'm like, was it a dietitian? And they're like, I don't think so. Or, I got some nutrition advice from my CrossFit coach or from my running coach, and it was nothing like working with you, Holley. It's just, it's not the same thing. It's like going to, like your friend who, watches Grey's Anatomy for your medical issue instead of the doctor. I know some people probably actually do that these days because there's a lot of medical community distrust, but
Yeah.
I digress.
Can I add one thing, Holly?
You can add so many things.
Because I've also had it where like one of a client of mine has gone to like a registered dietitian, but someone who is not like doesn't understand running and the demands of running. And that client literally got told that like Tailwind has too much sugar in it or something. And it's like, what is going so yeah, I would take it a step further and be like, the sports
dietitians.
sports part is necessary.
And like you have some really good dietitians who specialize in sports who like don't have the board certification credential, or at least don't have it yet because they need all the experience. But like, no, I totally agree with you, because I've also been that dietitian, like working in a clinical setting and just not knowing and being like, that seems like a lot of carbohydrates. And like everything I've been taught is how to help sedentary people who have blood sugar issues. So like this doesn't compute in my brain. Or I've been teaching low sodium diet educations to people with heart failure in the hospital for 3 years. And now you're telling me I need to take in a whole day's worth in an hour workout. So like, I get why it's scary. And I think it is important to say too, like dietitians really don't have any education in fitness. You would think they do because they overlap a lot just in conversation, but we don't. We don't have any education in fitness. Very, very minimal, probably a similar amount of education and fitness as doctors have in nutrition in medical school. It's a very small amount. Like we know some stuff, but not a lot of stuff. So that's one reason why too, I became a personal trainer and saw a lot of that out myself, because I was like, well, I feel like this is something I should know more about and also selfishly want to know more about. But anyway, that's my grievance about sports dietitians.
And to your point, Vicky, sometimes same thing happens with physical therapists if they're not sports related. Sometimes they're told, "Wow,
specialization.
Stop running. Like, why are you running? What's the point?" And so same thing with like you mentioned, Holly, with your PCP. Like, don't go to them and ask them, about your blood work, because they have 10 hours of nutritional education in their entire program. So
they're working with like, you're the healthiest person they probably see.
So they're like, what? So anyway, totally derailing. But back to the scenario at hand, which we've all forgotten.
No, it's the injured runner, and they have a bone stress injury, and they came to see me. Do you want me to take it away?
Go ahead.
So this has happened a bunch of times. So I love that Vicky had said like a lot of PCPs don't even bridge the gap between nutrition and bone health. And I agree with that. And I would also say, like we were just saying, a lot of run coaches and just non-running PTs don't bridge the gap either. So they're constantly seeing injured runners, but they're not really able to help address the root cause because it's not their specialty, or they just don't know. So like, part of this conversation too is if you're a professional and you're learning about topics outside of your specialty, it's really valuable because then you know enough to identify an issue and refer. You don't have to fix it, but you can refer elsewhere and then get people basically care that they need with like the most efficient timeline, path of least resistance. Yeah, bone health, and overuse injuries, especially if they're not healing or getting them all the time, or they're super nagging. Almost always a nutrition component, especially bone stress injuries. A lot of people just don't know that, but there's a lot of different reasons for that. One, the bone remodeling process requires calories and a lot of different minerals. So if that's lacking in your diet, you're just not giving your body the materials to build itself back stronger. At the same time, participating in a very high impact sport that's going to continue breaking it down without rebuilding it back stronger. It can also impact if we're not eating enough hormone production. Sex hormones in particular help with the bone remodeling process, especially when it pertains to female athletes with estrogen production. So if we're not taking care of the reproductive system by eating enough, it's one of the first things that usually gets shut down, and that directly affects your bone health, even if you never, ever want to have kids. And this is important. So it's definitely something that, I love to address. And sometimes too, people have come to me injured kind of more for like the blood work consult, and which is like a single consultation that my team offers. And we're like, okay, there's several deficiencies here, or you have a history of this type of deficiency, but you're supplementing and it's not getting fixed. So like there's more digging that we have to do. And there's maybe a longer term relationship that we need to sign up for or maintain in order to do that work over time, because it can take definitely time. A lot of people, I think, think that going to a dietitian means getting a quote unquote nutrition plan, which I think they think is like a meal plan or like a nice typed out protocol that they're supposed to follow, and that's it. But it's a lot more than that. Sure, we can give you some examples of those things along the way, but it's so much more individualized than that. I mean, the first question with me is just me asking you questions and going over your intake form and trying to collect like a ton of information and assessment, and then kind of looking at the big picture, zooming in on some gaps that we can start filling immediately that are going to make the biggest difference. And identifying barriers and challenges to filling those gaps. Is there a fear around eating more? Okay, we need to work on that. Otherwise, we're probably never going to eat more because we're afraid to. Are there a lot of GI issues preventing you from eating more because you're kind of worried that you're going to flare things up? Okay, then we have some work to do there. You know, is your ferritin so low and you're taking iron, but it's still so low? Okay, we got to figure out why that's happening, because more supplementation is not always the case. Or are you taking way too many supplements and we need to like start over, back off, and reevaluate? So
Or
there's
just
a
get a
lot that
bunch of
goes into it.
transfusions, right?
Oh, vitamin transfusions. If the gut works, use it. That's one of the tattoos most dietitians want to get on their forehead. And if it works, we don't need to go get vitamin infusions. We should figure out why it's not working. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, the injured runner, absolutely. Sports dietitian, good person to have on your team. We also get it. We've been injured before too, and we hate that. And I will echo what Victoria said too. It is very, very nice to get a client from run coaches like the two on this call, and you already know that they're not being overtrained. That's really helpful, because then at least I don't have to be like, so you're running 80 miles a week, working full time, and have 3 speed workouts per week, and you've been running for 5 years? Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Too
that's
often.
got to be a conversation that we have. But that's
Happening a
rarely
lot.
happening when they're coming from a coach that I already know and trust to be a good coach.
Yeah. So much of that. And so no coaches are ever saying the question of, oh, are you prepared to eat more if you're going to run 20 more miles per week than you used to? They don't really say that, but I always do, and I make sure that's a point. I digress. So Amanda, so now we're eating better. We went with Holley. We got our injury figured out, and now we're gonna start building back strength. So in this scenario, how are you helping out? How are you working with everyone? How are you getting everyone strong and ready to get back out there?
Not just like with Holly's profession and Vicky's profession in sports dietetics and really sports physical therapy, respectively, not all personal trainers are created equal. And um, I love that we just came off of a bone health chat with our sports RD Holley, because my role as a personal trainer, my philosophy is about having the individual who works with me continue to move throughout every decade of their life. It is, and if aesthetics comes with those things, and if body composition goals can be a part of the conversation, so be it. But my role is to make sure that your body is not only equipped for the demands of running, but equipped for the demands of living well and living long and participating in your sport of choice for as well and as long as you can. Right. So we're not gonna overdo it. We're gonna modify your load. I'm gonna make sure that I'm in close contact and communication with the doctor on the call. And I'm going to also make sure that what we're doing makes sense, which often means it's boring. Always, like not just if you're injured, just in general. It's often going to be boring, and it's not a setback. It's an opportunity for us to build a stronger foundation in this post injury world. Um, you know, I think that there is a lot of hesitation when a runner, especially, is returning from injury, and a lot of it is occurring in the mind. I am not immune to being traumatized by an injury. Vicky's voice notes would know. Vicky is my physical therapist, so she really is. It is a real thing to be afraid, re-engage in movement, and be afraid of getting injured again. I do think, and it's not just my belief, that our bodies will often recover faster than our minds will allow us to believe that they do. So my role is to make sure that the person in front of me feels safe, right? But that I'm also instilling some confidence in them that, you're ready to handle that single leg deadlift. It's time that we incorporated single leg jumps, right? Let's make sure, how are you feeling? Great. You ate before this session, right, Sarah? Yes, I did. Oh, I didn't mean to. I trained 30 Sarahs. It's not a big deal. Literally have 6 on my roster. Could have named any of them. And just and these little touch points that aren't necessarily me speaking outside my scope of practice, right? I have clients who work with both Vicky and Holley who will say to me in a session like, "Can you hold on one second? I didn't have something to eat before this." And that's important. I have clients who say to me, I did not like, I didn't do my physical therapy work. Can we spend like 10 more minutes doing this? Yes, we can. And just full and knowing that like my that's my goal is for all the pieces to come together so that they feel more capable at the end of their session.
Yeah, I love that. I think what was, as we walk through the scenario, the things I took notice is like, adding strength back into is an important part of the injury recovery process, right? But you're also eating, right? Eating is a huge part of recovering from an injury. And, assessing the injury and understanding load and understanding the why and what is causing it is also a big part because all those pieces of puzzle are what help each expert here in this kind of train understand how to do that, understand how to fix it, understand how to help you in your unique scenario, in your unique body that can't be just, oh, I did this with someone else, so I know what to do here. Like that's not how this works. And this is why this having a team, having this fantastic four around is sort of so helpful. And so, as we go forward with this scenario, and we talked about it a little bit, but maybe we can all expand on a little bit how we communicate, between each other, how, and also how we help our athletes. Sometimes it's a sports dietitian helping an athlete get to a run coach or a strength coach, like how we build trust with our athletes to kind of reach out to other experts, and looping them in back with us, right? How to, like you talked earlier about, getting a HIPAA form signed so we can kind of share information from therapists. The same thing kind of happens with sports dietitians with athletes. I don't have any HIPAA forms as a coach, understandably so. But maybe we could talk a little bit about how we all communicate and, work with athletes as a team. Anyone can go.
I'll quickly jump in here just to piggyback off something Holley said that I felt was super important, which was I think a huge part of that communication also includes the professional, like having some understanding as to why that other profession is going to help them. So exactly what you said, Holley, when you were like, it's good to know what you don't know, but like having a knowledge and that understanding and like branching out your own knowledge. Because when I refer a client to a sports dietitian, it's a lot of education, right? It's here's why this person is going to help you. Here's why you should go seek out this person. And I have to have a level of understanding as to why they need this sports dietitian because I understand, a very minimal amount, but enough to know that this is what you need to refer out. And I think that ability to know what you don't know and to have that interest in understanding at least a basic level of that other profession is necessary because in order to get the buy-in from a client, I have to be like, here's why working with a strength coach is going to be super important. Here's why working with a sports dietitian, here's why working with a coach like Nick is really, really necessary for you because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that's also goes into what I said earlier about specifically the four of us, but also like, if you're on Instagram, if you're on our Instagram, we usually shout out like the same, we're in kind of the same bubble because we know and we trust certain people in these professions because I know that they're going to be, that you are not going to, tell them to cut the sugar at a tailwind unless it's like really necessary, unless there's something that I don't know about it, which is very possible. So It's the level of understanding that this is what you need, and also the education that I'm giving to the client for them to buy in order to, send them on their way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think like I had called out a little while back, maybe it worked because the program changed, but I had called out various like DIY blood work companies, like third party blood work companies, maybe not giving running influencers discount codes, because what it was encouraging was the people who are using this running influencers discount code, they get the blood work done and they share their results with the running influencer and are like, what do you think? And then the running influencer does one of two things. They either say, I don't know, go to a sports dietitian, which is what you should do. Or they're like, oh, I Googled maybe what to do about this. So maybe try an iron supplement. And then they come to me because they OD'd on iron supplements and have way more problems to fix. Or we're told, oh, I think that means you have hematochromatosis because of, your iron being high. And I'm like, that's not what that means. Some of the companies have changed that and they no longer give discount codes to running influencers. Maybe my grievances worked, but I called this out a while ago, and a running coach came to me. Nobody on this call, but a running coach came to me and was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like if they share their blood work with me and I see that their ferritin's low, and I know from following sports dietitians that that's not good. And I kind of say, it's really great that you can identify that. What you say is, hey, I see some markers on here that are abnormal, and I'm going to refer you to the qualified professional to help you holistically and not give you recommendations that is medical advice outside of my scope of practice. So it really is that simple. And when we do have, like intercommunication on the multidisciplinary team, like for me, I know sometimes it's, yeah, we sign all the waivers we need to sign if it's like healthcare professional to healthcare professional or healthcare professional to, outside forces for me. And then maybe I'm just shooting that person a quick email to send them some updates. A lot of the times I'm hopping on a call with them, or they're hopping on a call with me. I can think of one scenario with someone's therapist. Actually, it was Stephanie Roth Goldberg is who I had the call with. She was like, hey, I just, wanted to reach out. The client signed a waiver. It's all good. She just needs to sign one for you because I see she's going to go over some stuff with you. And I just want you to hear like where we're at so that she doesn't have to fill you in as much on the call, basically. And everyone's good with this. And then we hop on the call and she kind of tells me, hey, we've really been working super hard on this. So I just want you to keep that in mind when you're going over XYZ nutrition advice, which is so helpful for me, because then I know kind of what to prioritize and like how to approach certain topics. So yeah, that's kind of how that goes. And I will also say too, from like the nutrition standpoint, I mean, if you're investing your time and your energy in like a running coach, and then you're maybe like a little dinged up, so then you're going to see Vicky as your physical therapist, and you're investing in traveling to a marathon world major and hotel, flight, entry fee, all that, but like you don't know how to fuel your long runs, you're leaving so much potential on the table, not just in your performance, but like your health status over time. Because if you don't know how to fuel your long runs over time, you're going to end up seeing me, but it's probably going to be because you're in a hole and not just because you want to learn some stuff. So it will take less time and less of an investment the earlier you do it, without kind of making a lot of the mistakes that I'm sure we've all made along the way. So I wanted to throw those 2 cents in there too.
You gave us 5 cents.
Yeah.
Maybe like
you really did.
Maybe I overpaid a little.
We got what we needed and then some.
Yeah, I think the one thing I might add is, sometimes people don't have access to a full team. It's hard to, have all this at the same
Yes.
time. And we're not saying, hey, just get on board with everything at once and just pay for it forever. But like, there's a lot of value that's added in working with a sports physical therapist when you have an injury, and you can take things away from it that can help you in the future because it is advice given specifically to you for your injury. So if that injury pops up, you can try this stuff first. And if that doesn't work, then maybe it's something else. If you go to a sports dietitian and learn about all the things that none of us know, because the internet is a cesspool of information and no one teaches us nutrition in school at the level we need, you can learn a lot and take that with you. And again, it is tailored towards you, and it is information that you can have for the future to kind of address things. So sometimes it's not just having the team at all times, but working with people throughout time is valuable information for you to be smarter as an athlete and treat yourself.
I want to piggyback off that because that's such an important point, and I think that also that's the dividing point between a professional and someone who is just moonlighting as such and like constantly saying that they're the only person who can fix you is in every single person that I work with. I don't just say like, do this one specific thing and repeat that 100 times and like, good luck. I'm constantly trying to give them the full rounded piece of knowledge and understanding as to like why this happened instead of just giving you 3 exercises to fix you. And I think that the wording is what gets people from the influencers. Like the influencers know what to say. They know what to say. I've had this before and I know how to fix it. And you will never hear a professional say that because we're not trying to fix you in one session. We're trying to give you the tools so that you don't need to see us again if this thing doesn't pop up. And that's why I offer like 1 hour virtual consultations where you can just pick my brain and you don't need to schedule a follow-up, right? Unless you feel like most people don't, to be honest. And like people are listening to this, and that's probably a terrible business model. I'm not in it for the business. Like I'm genuinely in it to help you. And I want to try and teach you about yourself with all of the knowledge that I've gained. And that's the difference between an influencer online who is going to be like, oh, no, X, Y, and Z, I'm going to fix you, versus a professional who has all of this knowledge, who is trying to give you all of those tools as well.
And free
So,
resources too. It could be as simple
yeah.
as, hey, Nick, I really want to fuel my long runs. How should I do that? What are some good options? And Nick's like, yo, go check out Holly Samuel's post on this. Great. They got an answer from a qualified professional that Nick trusts. Was it individualized information? No, but it didn't really need to be. And they could just learn some stuff for free online. So I also think too, that's a huge perk of social media platforms in general. Obviously, yeah, there is like a bit of a cesspool situation happening out there, but a lot of it is good too. So you can also just self learn some stuff, and maybe you learn enough to say, I really do think I need to sign up for nutrition coaching, or I do think I need a dietitian to go over my blood work. Let me plan to budget for that so I can do it next year, or let me budget for that so that in my off season, maybe I'm not working with a running coach and not paying for that, and I'm not getting injured a ton, so I'm not having to go to PT, but I'm going to go see a dietitian instead. Like, there's so many different ways to try and access this information from qualified sources, whether it's the free stuff online or just kind of learning about why it might be better to have the more individualized assessment, like Vicky was saying. And there's a lot of different ways to do that too.
Yeah. Go ahead, Amanda.
I ain't
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think we wrap this one up. Do you want to wrap us up, Amanda?
I sure do. I think that there is a ton of takeaways in this episode for folks who may have the support squad that they need. Maybe they feel validated. And for those who are interested in maybe just investing a little bit more, because your health is worth that. And if you're investing, like Holley was saying, in so many other areas of your life related to your sport of choice, whether that is running or you consider yourself a fitness enthusiast, an active individual, hire the people on this call or hire someone else who's good at what they do. And I think that one of our biggest flexes, each of us have referred out to other people within our own specialties. I have sent folks to other personal trainers who would be better equipped. And I'm certain that Vicky and Holley and Nick have done the same when it comes to their roles as well. So there is somebody for everyone.
My colleagues are so smart. Like, you should go see this person.
They really are. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And Coach Nick and I have our Patreon for extended conversations. You can feel free to join us there. We were talking a lot about fueling. I do also want to remind you, as we are getting into half marathon and marathon training, big miles on the weekends, that you should fuel with whatever gel, chew, food that you need for these runs. But if you'd like to try Crank Sports and support the podcast, B2C checkout will give you a little money off and you will support between two coaches. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and you can reach out to any of us at any time or at betweentwocoaches@gmail.com. And we will see you next time.
Bye.